The quantum drive was dying, and Captain Thelnax knew it. The Vexari merchant vessel shuddered again as another pulse of energy misfired through the core systems. His crystalline fingers tapped nervously against the command console, each tap making a soft chiming sound that echoed through the bridge. How much longer? Thelnax asked his engineer, trying to keep the worry from his voice. We have maybe 6 hours before complete failure, the engineer replied, his crystalline body flickering with stress patterns. Maybe less. Thelnax looked at the star map displayed before him. They were still 3 hours from Waystation 7 at their current struggling speed. Behind them lay 4 different repair stations, all belonging to various alien species. He had tried them all. The Kulthan station told him the damage was too complex. The Zereth facility said they did not work on Vexari technology. The corporate station near the Deneb system quoted him a price higher than his entire ship's value, and a repair time of 6 months. But everyone in the shipping lanes knew about the human stations. If you had a problem no one else could fix, you went to the humans. They were strange creatures, these humans, with their soft skin and odd way of thinking. They had only joined the galactic community 50 years ago, barely a moment in the long history of space travel. Yet somehow, they had become the most trusted repair specialists in known space. Set course for Waystation 7, Thelnax ordered. Emergency speed. His crew looked at him with surprise. Emergency speed would burn out what little remained of their drive's stability. But Thelnax had heard the stories. The humans never turned anyone away. They always found a way. Waystation 7 hung in the darkness of space like a massive metal flower. It was not pretty by galactic standards. Human construction was functional, not artistic. The station was built from connected modules, each one added over time as the business grew. Docking arms extended in all directions, and ships from a dozen different species waited in organized queues for their turn. Inside the station's command center, Jake Morrison stared at the screens showing the incoming traffic. He was a tall man with gray hair and rough hands that had fixed 10,000 problems. His face carried the lines of someone who had spent decades solving impossible puzzles. "We have an emergency call," said Amy Park, the station administrator. She was young, barely 30, but sharp as a laser cutter. Vexari merchant ship, quantum drive failing. Jake looked at the schedule displayed on the wall. Every repair bay was full. Every team was working double shifts. They had a backlog of 3 weeks. What did the other stations say? Jake asked. Refused service, Amy replied. Called it irreparable. Jake smiled slightly. He had heard that word before. Irreparable was what other species said when they did not want to think outside the manual. Humans did not believe in that word. Clear Bay 7, Jake ordered. Get Danny and his team ready. Amy nodded and began sending messages. Within minutes, a Zeroth cargo hauler was politely moved to a different bay, and Bay 7 was being prepared for an emergency arrival. Down in the repair section, Danny Rodriguez was already gearing up. He was shorter than Jake, with strong arms and quick hands that could work in tight spaces. His tool belt was custom-made, carrying instruments from 6 different species technologies. Danny believed that every tool had a purpose and the right combination could solve any problem. Emergency job? Asked Kate Sullivan, his junior mechanic. She was fresh out of training, only 2 years on the station, but she learned fast. Vexari quantum drive, Danny said, checking his diagnostic scanner. They say it cannot be fixed, Kate grinned. That is what they always say. The Vexari ship limped into Bay 7, trailing sparks from its drive core. The docking clamp secured it gently and the bay doors sealed. Atmosphere flooded in, and the human repair team approached the vessel. Captain Thelnax emerged from his ship, his crystalline body showing colors of stress and relief mixed together. In Vexari culture, emotions showed through light patterns in their transparent forms. Right now, Thelnax was a swirling mix of blue worry and orange hope. You are the humans? Thelnax asked, his voice coming through a translator device. That is right, Jake said, extending his hand. Thelnax touched it carefully with his crystalline fingers, copying the human greeting he had heard about. I am Jake Morrison, station commander. This is Danny Rodriguez, our chief mechanic. My drive is failing, Thelnax said quickly. The others said it cannot be fixed. They said I should buy a new ship. Danny walked around the Vexari vessel, his eyes scanning every detail. He did not need fancy equipment for this first look. Human eyes were good at spotting problems. Years of experience taught mechanics to see what was wrong just by looking at how a ship sat, how it hummed, What smells came from its vents? Let me see the drive core, Danny said. Inside the ship, the quantum drive was a mess. Crystalline energy matrices were cracked. Power conduits showed burn marks. The core containment field flickered weakly. It was bad. Really bad. Any standard repair manual would call this a total loss. Danny pulled out his scanner and started taking readings. Kate watched over his shoulder, learning. The scanner beeped and hummed, collecting data. The main crystal is fractured in 7 places, Kate said, reading the display. The containment field generator is burned out. Half the power conduits are fused. This would take months to fix with proper replacement parts. We do not have months, Thelnak said sadly, and I do not have money for proper parts. Danny looked at the readings for a long moment. His mind was already working on the problem, seeing connections and possibilities. This was what humans did best. They saw solutions where others saw only problems. We can fix this, Danny said finally. Thelnax's crystalline body flashed bright orange with surprise. You can fix this? Yeah, Danny said, pulling off his jacket and rolling up his sleeves. It will not be pretty and it will not be by the manual, but it will work. Better than before, probably. This was the human way. When something broke, you did not just give up. You looked at what you had, what you could make, what you could borrow from other systems. You improvised. You adapted. You made it work. Kate began pulling tools from the equipment lockers. Danny started sketching a repair plan on his datapad, his fingers moving fast. The plan involved parts from 3 different species technologies, some custom fabricated pieces, and what Danny called a creative bypass using modified components. This should not work, Thelnak said, looking at the plan. According to the manual, no, Danny agreed. But manuals are written by people who never had to fix things in the real world. We are going to use a Kulthan power regulator modified to handle Vexari energy frequencies. Then we will bypass the damaged sections with human-made conduits. The fractured crystal we can stabilize using a technique we developed for fixing our own old ships. Amy appeared in the doorway of the repair bay. Danny, I have 5 more ships asking for emergency repairs. A Zirath warship, 2 Kulthan freighters, and a pair of Shirazi science vessels. Tell them to get in line, Danny said, not looking up from his work. We take jobs in order of arrival unless someone is dying. This was another human principle. Fair treatment. Everyone got the same service, whether they were rich or poor, military or civilian, friend or former enemy. At human repair stations, your money and your politics did not matter. Only your need mattered. Jake walked through the station's corridors, checking on the various repair bays. In Bay 3, Lisa Chen was working on a Kulthan freighter's navigation system. She was Jake's best electronic specialist, able to understand computer systems that spoke 6 different programming languages. The Kulthan captain watched nervously as Lisa rewired his entire navigation core, using parts from a human satellite and some clever programming. In Bay 5, Bobby Chen, Lisa's uncle, was teaching a young Zirath engineer how to repair a plasma conduit using human methods. The Zirath was learning that sometimes the best tool was not the most advanced one, but the simplest one used correctly. This was happening all over the galaxy now. Human repair stations were training aliens in human methods. It was spreading. This philosophy of never giving up, of creative problem solving, of helping anyone who needed it. Back in Bay 7, Danny and his team worked through the night. Human hands moved with practiced efficiency. They cut away damaged sections, installed the modified parts, ran tests, made adjustments. Kate learned with every step, asking questions, understanding the why behind each decision. 12 hours later, Danny stepped back from the Vexari quantum drive. His hands were dirty, his clothes were stained with lubricant and coolant, and his back hurt. But the drive core hummed with steady power. The containment field glowed strong and stable. All the readouts showed green. Fire it up, Danny said. Thelnax activated his ship's drive from the bridge. The quantum core spun up smoothly, faster and cleaner than it had in years. The power flow was steady. The energy readings were perfect. It was working. Not just working, but working better than when the ship was new. How? Thelnax asked, his entire crystalline body glowing bright orange with joy. How did you do this? Danny wiped his hands on a rag and smiled. We used parts from Kulthan technology for power regulation, human materials for the conduits, and The smell of burned metal filled Bay 3 as Lisa Chen worked deep inside a Shirazi navigation computer. Her hands moved carefully through the tangle of circuits and crystal processors. Around her, 3 Shirazi engineers watched with fascination and confusion. "This should not work," one of them said through his translator. The Shirazi were tall, thin beings with 6 fingers and large eyes adapted for their dim home world. "You are right," Lisa said without looking up. "According to your manual, this system requires a complete replacement. But watch this." She connected a human-made processor chip to the Shirazi crystal matrix using a custom adapter she had fabricated that morning. The navigation system flickered, then stabilized, then began running faster than its original specifications. "You combined our crystal processing with your electronic computing," the Shirazi engineer said, amazement clear in his voice. "But they use completely different operating principles." "That is exactly why it works better," Lisa explained, finally pulling herself out of the tight space. "Your crystal processors are great for complex calculations but slow for simple tasks. Our electronic chips are fast for simple operations but struggle with complex math. Together they cover each other's weaknesses." This was the human approach to repair work. Most alien species thought in terms of pure systems. A Vexari ship used Vexari technology, maintained by Vexari methods, repaired with Vexari parts. Mixing different technologies was considered dangerous or impossible. But humans saw things differently. They saw tools, not rules. They saw possibilities, not boundaries. Lisa had learned this philosophy from her uncle Bobby, who had learned it from his father, who had been an engineer during Earth's early space program. Back then, human space missions ran on computers less powerful than a modern food dispenser. They made do with what they had. They improvised. They survived through creative thinking and refusal to accept failure. In the station's recreation room, Bobby Chen sat with a group of young engineers from various species. At 70 years old, Bobby was the oldest human on Waystation 7. His hands shook slightly from decades of work, but his mind was sharp as ever. "Let me tell you about Apollo 13, Bobby said, holding a cup of coffee. The alien engineers leaned in to listen. They had all heard this story before, but Bobby told it often because it was important. This was hundreds of years ago, back when humans were just learning to travel in space. 3 astronauts were going to our moon when their ship exploded. They were going to die. The carbon dioxide in their cabin was going to poison them before they could get home. The filters that cleaned the air were the wrong shape. They did not fit the backup system." A young Kulthan engineer, his methane suit hissing softly, asked, "So they died?" "No," Bobby said with a smile. "They lived. Because the ground team on Earth looked at what the astronauts had available in their ship. They had plastic bags. They had tape. They had cardboard from their flight manuals. And the engineers said, 'We can make a filter from this.' And they did. Using things that were never meant to be air filters, they built a system that saved 3 lives. This is the human way?" asked a Xerath engineer, her scales reflecting the room's light. "This is the human way," Bobby confirmed. "We do not accept impossible. We look at what we have, not what we do not have. We make it work." Down in the main repair bay, Danny was explaining this same philosophy to Kate as they worked on a Xerath warship. The vessel had taken damage in a border skirmish and its weapon systems were offline. The Xerath military needed these ships operational fast because tensions were high with a neighboring species. "The targeting computer is fried," Kate said, reading her scanner. "We would need to order replacement parts from the Xerath home world. That would take 3 weeks. Look at the damage again," Danny said. "Not what is broken. What can we save?" Kate studied the system more carefully. The main processor was destroyed, yes, but the sensor arrays were fine. The power distribution was intact. The mechanical targeting system still moved smoothly. "We could use a human targeting computer," Kate said slowly, thinking it through. "But the interface is completely different. So we build an adapter," Danny said. "We use their sensors as input, run it through our computer for processing, then output the commands in their system's language. Like a translator for machines." This was what made human mechanics special across the galaxy. They saw systems as conversations between components. If 2 pieces could not talk to each other directly, you built something that could translate. If one piece was broken beyond repair, you found another piece that could do the same job, even if it came from a completely different type of ship. The work took 8 hours. Danny and Kate fabricated custom interfaces, wrote new programming code that could handle both human and Xerath systems, and tested every connection multiple times. When they finished, the Zeroth warship's weapons system was operational. More than that. It was actually more accurate than before because human targeting computers processed information faster than Zeroth ones. The Zeroth commander walked through his ship with disbelief clear in his body language. His scales shifted through colors that showed surprise and respect. "You made our ship better," the commander said. "This is not just repair. This is improvement." "That is what we do," Danny said, wiping grease from his hands. "We do not just put things back the way they were. We make them better if we can." The commander's scales shifted to show deep respect. "Our own military shipyards would have taken 6 weeks and charged us triple your price. And they would have insisted we follow standard protocols. You completed the work in 1 day and made improvements." Amy was handling the business side in her office. The Zeroth commander sat across from her, reviewing the bill displayed on a datapad. "This price is very low," the commander said suspiciously. "Why do you charge so little?" Amy smiled. "We charge enough to keep the station running and pay our crew fairly. We do not charge what the market will bear. We charge what is fair." "But you could charge more," the commander pressed. "Every ship in the galaxy needs repairs. You could become wealthy." "We are doing fine," Amy said. "Wealth is not our goal. We want to help. We want to be the place where anyone can come for assistance, regardless of their ability to pay premium prices." This confused many alien species. In galactic economics, you charge the maximum price possible. That was how businesses worked. But human repair stations operated on different principles. They charged fair prices, treated everyone equally, and measured success by problems solved, not profit maximized. The Zeroth commander paid his bill and left, still confused, but deeply impressed. As his warship departed, 2 more Zeroth vessels were approaching the station. Word was spreading in the Zeroth fleet that human stations could do in 1 day what their own shipyards took weeks to accomplish. In Bay 5, Lisa was training a mixed group of alien engineers in human repair philosophy. They stood around a damaged power conduit from a Colton ship. "What does your manual say to do?" Lisa asked the group. A Vexari engineer checked his datapad. "Replace the entire conduit assembly. Estimated cost 50,000 credits. Estimated time 2 days. "Good," Lisa said. "Now forget the manual. Look at the actual damage." "What do you see?" The engineers examined the conduit more carefully. Most of the assembly was fine. Only one small section was damaged. "We could cut out the damaged section and splice in a replacement piece," suggested the Colton engineer. "Exactly," Lisa said. "Cost 500 credits. Time 2 hours. Same result, fraction of the price and time. But the manual does not tell you this because the manufacturer wants you to buy complete assemblies. We are not here to make manufacturers rich. We are here to fix problems." This was becoming a movement across the galaxy. Human repair philosophy was spreading. Young mechanics of all species were learning to think creatively, to improvise, to see solutions instead of limitations. The old ways of strictly following manuals and manufacturer protocols were giving way to a new approach that valued practical results over proper procedures. Back in the command center, Jake reviewed the station's statistics with Amy. In the past year, they had repaired over 3,000 ships from 20 different species. Their success rate was 98%. The 2% they could not fix were redirected to specialized facilities with detailed notes on what was tried and what might work. "We have requests to open 5 more human repair stations at major trade hubs," Amy said, showing him the messages. "The Galactic Commerce Authority is offering funding and support." "What do they want in return?" Jake asked. He had learned long ago that nothing in galactic politics was free. "They want us to train their people in human repair methods," Amy said. "They see what we are doing here." "They want it everywhere." Jake considered this carefully. Spreading human knowledge was good, but they needed to make sure the philosophy came with the techniques. It was not enough to teach someone how to bypass a damaged circuit. They needed to teach them why to help, when to improvise, and how to treat every customer fairly. "We will do it," Jake decided, "but we train them our way. Not just the skills, but the values. They need to understand that this work is not about profit. It is about service." That evening, Danny found Kate sitting in the observation deck looking. The Galactic Council chamber floated in neutral space, a massive structure where representatives from 37 species met to discuss matters affecting the entire galaxy. Today, the chamber was filled with tension. On one side sat the corporate manufacturing cartels, represented by expensive lawyers and backed by powerful economic interests. On the other side sat representatives from human repair stations, led by Jake Morrison. Vendala, the Shirazi mediator assigned to this case, reviewed the complaints filed by the cartels. She was old by Shirazi standards, with silver markings on her skin that showed decades of diplomatic service. She had resolved trade disputes, prevented wars, and negotiated treaties. But this case was unusual. The cartels were angry, and they wanted the human repair stations regulated or shut down. The human repair stations are destroying the established economic model, argued the lead cartel representative, a Kulthon in an expensive containment suit. They repair items that should be replaced. They use non-standard parts that void warranties. They charge prices that make legitimate business impossible. Jake sat calmly, listening. He had been in difficult meetings before. Military command had taught him patience. They violate intellectual property by reverse engineering our technology, another cartel lawyer added. They ignore safety protocols. They create hybrid systems that no manufacturer supports. This must be stopped. Vendala listened to both sides present their arguments. Then she made her decision. I will conduct an independent investigation. I will visit the human repair stations, interview their clients, and review their methods. Then I will make my recommendation to the council. 3 days later, Vendala arrived at Waystation 7. She was accompanied by 2 assistants and a security detail. Jake met her at the docking bay, offering the traditional human handshake. Welcome to Waystation 7, Jake said. We have nothing to hide. You may inspect any part of our operation. Vendala appreciated his directness. Many species would have been defensive or tried to hide problems. Jake seemed confident in his work. She began by interviewing clients in the station's waiting area. A Vexari merchant captain named Felthon was waiting for his ship to be serviced. Why did you choose a human station? Vendala asked. Felthon's crystalline body showed colors of satisfaction. My navigation system failed 6 months ago. I went to the manufacturer's service center. They told me the entire system needed replacement. The cost was more than my ship's value. They suggested I sell my vessel for scrap and buy a new one. And the humans? The humans fixed it in 2 days for 1/10 the price. The system works better now than when it was new. They showed me exactly what was wrong and why their solution worked. They did not try to sell me things I did not need. Vendala interviewed a dozen more clients. The pattern was consistent. Other repair facilities had refused service, quoted extreme prices, or recommended complete replacements. Human stations had found solutions, charged reasonable prices, and treated customers with respect. A Kultan freighter captain named Dorn spoke with particular passion. My ship broke down near Zirath space during their conflict with the Kultan border worlds. I am Kultan. The Zirath wanted to impound my ship. I was going to lose everything. But Waystation 7 is in neutral territory. The Zirath respect the station's neutrality. I got my repairs done safely, and the humans did not care about the politics. They just fixed my ship. This was an interesting detail. Vendala made notes. The human stations seemed to operate as neutral ground where even warring species could meet peacefully. She toured the repair bays with Jake, watching the mechanics at work. In one bay, Lisa was training a young Zirath engineer and a Vexari apprentice working side by side on a Shirazi science vessel. 6 months ago, the Zirath and Vexari had been shooting at each other in a border dispute. Now they were cooperating, learning together. How did you create this environment? Vendala asked Jake. We have one rule, Jake said. Everyone is equal here. Your species, your politics, your wealth, none of that matters. If your ship is broken and you need help, we provide it. We treat a Zirath warship the same as a Vexari merchant vessel. We charge the same fair prices to everyone. In Bay 7, Danny was working on a particularly complicated repair. A mixed-species colony ship had suffered multiple system failures. The ship carried families from 4 different species, all trying to start a new life on a frontier world. They had no money for expensive repairs. What would happen to these people if you could not fix their ship? Vendala asked. Danny looked up from his work, his face streaked with grease. They would be stranded. The colony world needs these people. Without them, the settlement might fail. Maybe hundreds of people already there would suffer. So we fix the ship. We charge them what they can afford, even if it is less than our costs. We do not let good people fail because of money. This philosophy puzzled Vendala. In galactic economics, profit was the primary motive, but humans seemed to operate on different principles. That evening, Jake invited Vendala to dinner in the station's dining hall. The room was filled with mechanics, engineers, and visiting ship crews from various species, all eating together, sharing stories. "Tell me about your history," Vendala said to Jake. "How did humans develop this approach to repair work?" Jake thought for a moment. Humans come from a world with limited resources. For most of our history, we could not afford to throw things away and buy new ones. We had to fix what we had. We had to make things last. This created a culture of repair and improvisation. But you are no longer poor, Vendala observed. Your species has access to galactic markets and resources now. True, Jake agreed. But the philosophy remains. We remember what it was like to struggle. We remember what it felt like when nobody would help. So we help others now. We do not refuse anyone. We do not price people out of survival. We believe fixing things is more valuable than profiting from their failure. Over the next week, Vendala dug deeper into the impact of human repair stations on galactic affairs. She discovered something remarkable. In the past 5 years, 17 potential military conflicts had been avoided because human stations kept fleets operational during tense standoffs. When ships were broken and crews were vulnerable, being able to get reliable repairs at neutral stations reduced the pressure that led to shooting. She found that 3 colony worlds had survived critical periods only because human stations kept their life support and supply ships running when manufacturers refused to service obsolete equipment. She discovered that trade disputes between species had been mediated at human stations, where representatives met on neutral ground and worked together while their ships were repaired. One case particularly interested her. A Shirazi medical ship had been carrying critical vaccines to a plague-affected world. The ship broke down and the manufacturer's nearest service center was 2 weeks away. The vaccines would expire in 3 days. Waystation 7 repaired the ship in 18 hours, working around the clock. 50,000 lives were saved. The medical ship's captain spoke to Vendala with deep emotion. The humans did not care that we could not pay full price. They did not care that our government was in dispute with the Human Council over trade tariffs. They saw people dying and they fixed our ship. How do you put a value on that? Vendala compiled her report carefully. She included economic analysis, showing that yes, human stations were disrupting the planned obsolescence model that many manufacturers relied on. But she also included the social analysis. Human stations were preventing conflicts, saving lives, and creating neutral meeting grounds that benefited the entire galaxy. Her conclusion was clear. The human repair stations were more valuable than any economic disruption they caused. She presented her report to the Galactic Council. The chamber was packed with observers. The cartels had brought their lawyers and lobbyists. Jake sat quietly with a small delegation of human mechanics and station administrators. The cartels are correct that human repair stations disrupt their business model, Vendala began. Human stations repair items that manufacturers want replaced. They charge lower prices. They use creative solutions that void warranties. All of this is true. The cartel representatives looked pleased. But Vendala was not finished. However, my investigation revealed that human repair stations provide services that go far beyond simple economic transactions. They serve as neutral territory where hostile species can meet safely. They provide emergency services that save lives. They keep critical infrastructure running when commercial interests would let it fail. They train the next generation of engineers in problem-solving and cooperation. She displayed data on the large screens. Images of colony ships being repaired. Medical vessels serviced during emergencies. Military fleets of opposing sides docked at the same station, maintaining peace through mutual need. In the past 5 years alone, human repair stations have prevented 17 potential military conflicts by maintaining ships during standoffs. They have saved 6 colony worlds by keeping supply lines operational. They have mediated 12 major trade disputes by providing neutral meeting ground. The economic value of these services far exceeds any lost profits to manufacturers. The council chamber was silent as representatives absorbed this. The emergency signal came at 3 a.m, station time. Jake woke immediately, years of military training making him alert the moment the alarm sounded. He reached the command center within 2 minutes, pulling on his jacket as he ran. Amy was already there, her face pale as she stared at the screens. We have a situation. A bad one. On the main display, a Vorthon vessel drifted in space, surrounded by military ships from 3 different species. The Vorthon ship was broadcasting a distress signal, but nobody was responding. The military vessels maintained a careful distance, their weapons pointed at the civilian ship. What happened? Jake asked. It is a plague ship, Amy said quietly. There was an outbreak on one of the Vorthon colony worlds. This ship was evacuating medical staff and samples for research, but their containment systems are failing. They have maybe 6 hours before the plague breaches into the crew sections. Jake felt his stomach tighten. How many crew? 200, plus critical research data that could help develop a cure. Danny entered the command center, followed by Lisa and Kate. The senior staff gathered around the displays, studying the situation. The Vorthon government has declared the ship expendable, Amy continued. They say the plague is too dangerous. If containment fails and the ship tries to dock anywhere, they will destroy it to prevent spread. Lisa pulled up data on the plague. It was nasty, highly contagious among Vorthons, fatal in 80% of cases, and able to survive in open space for weeks. If the containment failed, the crew was dead. If the ship was destroyed, 200 people died and valuable research was lost. They are asking for our help, Amy said. They sent a direct message to us. Jake called up the message on his screen. It was from the plague ship's captain, a human named Chris Parker who had been working as a medical transport pilot for the Vorthon government. The message was simple. Waystation 7, our containment is failing. All other stations have refused service. You are our last hope. We know the risk, we understand if you say no. But 200 people are going to die if we cannot fix this system. Please help us. The command center was silent. Everyone understood the stakes. If they brought the plague ship to the station, they risked contamination. If the containment failed during repairs, the entire station could be exposed. Hundreds of people on Waystation 7 could die. We should refuse, Amy said, her voice shaking. We have a responsibility to our crew and the other ships docked here. This is too dangerous. Jake looked at his staff. Danny met his eyes without speaking. Lisa stood with her arms crossed, thinking hard. Kate looked scared but determined. We need to vote, Jake said. This affects everyone on the station. Everyone gets a say. Within 20 minutes, the entire station crew was gathered in the main assembly area. Ship captains waiting for repairs were invited to listen. Jake explained the situation clearly, holding nothing back about the dangers. If we help this ship, we might be exposed to a deadly plague, Jake said. If the containment fails while we are working on it, this station could become a contamination site. Every one of us could die. But if we do not help, 200 people will definitely die, and research that could save thousands more will be lost. He paused, letting that sink in. We have built a reputation across the galaxy for never refusing anyone who needs help. Today we find out if we really mean that. This is what I propose. Anyone who wants to leave the station now may do so. No questions, no judgment. For those who stay, we take a vote on whether to help the plague ship. 10 people left. They were scared, and nobody blamed them. The remaining crew, over 100 people, voted. The tally was unanimous among those who stayed. They would help the plague ship. Jake opened a communication channel to the Vorthon military commander maintaining the quarantine. This is Waystation 7. We are going to repair the plague ship's containment system. We request you maintain your distance and do not interfere. The Vorthon commander's image appeared on the screen. She looked stunned. You understand the risk? This plague could contaminate your entire station. We understand, Jake said. We are going to help anyway. That is what we do. The commander was silent for a long moment. The Vorthon government has ordered us to destroy that ship if it moves toward any inhabited area. The ship is not moving, Jake said. We are going to it. Please do not interfere with our repair team. Danny assembled a team of volunteers. They would approach the plague ship in fully sealed biosuits, bringing specialized equipment to repair the containment system. Kate insisted on joining the team despite her junior status. I am coming, Kate said firmly when Danny tried to leave her behind. You taught me that the human way is to help. You do not get to exclude me now. They suited up in the heavy biosuits, designed to protect against biological, chemical, and radiation hazards. The suits were bulky and uncomfortable, with limited mobility and visibility. Working in them would be difficult. Lisa stayed on the station to coordinate, monitoring the repair team's vital signs and the plague ship's systems remotely. Jake watched from the command center, ready to make hard decisions if things went wrong. The repair team reached the plague ship and entered through an airlock that was then sealed behind them. Inside, they found Captain Chris Parker and his crew trying desperately to hold the failing systems together. The Vorthans wore their own contamination suits, exhausted from hours of emergency work. Thank you for coming, Chris said, his voice thick with emotion. Nobody else would even answer our calls. Show us the containment system, Danny said, getting straight to work. The plague research was stored in specialized containment cells in the ship's cargo bay. The cells used a combination of force fields, chemical barriers, and physical seals to keep the plague samples isolated. But one of the force field generators had burned out, and the chemical circulation system was failing. They had maybe 4 hours before total containment failure. Danny and his team studied the system. It was Vorthan technology, complex and delicate. The burned-out generator could not be repaired. It needed replacement. But there were no spare parts available, and no way to get them in time. We need to improvise, Danny said. Kate, what do we have that can generate a containment field? Kate thought fast, running through her mental inventory of human technologies that might work. We have a medical quarantine field generator back on the station. It is designed for isolating patients with contagious diseases. The frequency is different from Vorthan technology, but the principle is the same. Can we adapt it? Danny asked. Maybe, Kate said. We would need to modify the output frequency to match the Vorthan system and build an interface to connect it to their control network. It was the classic human approach. Take something designed for one purpose, modify it, and make it work for something completely different. But they had to do it in bulky biosuits, with limited tools and a ticking clock. Lisa arranged for the medical field generator to be sent over on a remote drone. Meanwhile, Danny's team began preparing the interface. They worked carefully, every movement deliberate. A torn biosuit could mean exposure to the plague. 2 hours passed. The chemical barrier system was now completely offline. Only one force field remained between the plague samples and the ship's atmosphere. If that failed, the crew would be infected within minutes. Danny installed the human medical field generator, his hands steady despite the pressure. Kate connected the interface she had built, translating between human and Vorthan systems. It was delicate work, requiring precision that was nearly impossible in the thick gloves of the biosuits. Ready to test, Danny said. Lisa monitored from Waystation 7, bringing the generator online. Field strength at 20%, 40%, 60%. The human generator hummed to life, creating a shimmering force field around the plague samples. The Vorthan monitoring systems flickered, then stabilized, recognizing the new field. 80%, Lisa reported. Full power. The field is stable. But they were not done. The chemical circulation system still needed repair. This system cleaned and recycled the containment atmosphere, preventing any plague particles from escaping even if the force fields failed. Chris Parker showed them the damage. A critical pump had seized up and the filtration membranes were clogged. Without this system, the containment was relying entirely on the force fields, which was not safe enough. Kate examined the pump. It was a Vorthan design, using organic compounds that human technology did not normally employ. But the basic principle was the same as any pump: move fluid from one place to another. We can use a human medical pump, Kate said. The ones we use for circulating medications in biosupport systems. We need to modify it to handle Vorthan containment chemicals instead of medicine. They worked through the next hour, adapting human medical equipment for Vorthan plague containment. It should not have worked. The technologies were too different, the purposes too divergent. But human engineering was built on making incompatible things work together. Finally, With 30 minutes left before the original containment would have failed completely, Danny activated the rebuilt system. The human pump hummed, circulating chemicals through new filtration membranes made from modified human air purifiers. The Vorthon monitoring system showed green across the board. 6 months after the plague ship incident, Waystation 7 was busier than ever. The repair bays operated 24 hours a day, handling ships from across the galaxy. But today was different. Today, representatives from all 37 member species of the Galactic Council were arriving for a ceremony that nobody had expected. Jake stood in the docking bay, watching the diplomatic vessels arrive one by one, elegant Shirazi ships with flowing organic designs, massive Kultan vessels built like fortresses, sleek Xerath warships gleaming with polished scales. Even the mysterious Kelthon, rarely seen outside their home systems, sent a representative. "This is really happening," Amy said, standing beside Jake. She wore her best uniform, pressed and formal, so different from her usual practical work clothes. "It still feels strange," Jake admitted. "We just do our jobs. We fix ships. Why does that deserve a galactic ceremony?" "Because nobody else does it the way we do," Amy said. "Because we changed how the galaxy thinks about service and help." The ceremony was held in the station's main assembly hall, hastily expanded to accommodate the hundreds of dignitaries and observers. News services from 20 species broadcast the event live across the galaxy. Danny, Lisa, Kate, Bobby, and the rest of the crew sat in the front rows, uncomfortable in formal clothes but proud of what they had built together. The Galactic Council speaker, a dignified Vexari named Thelmon, began the ceremony. His crystalline body glowed with formal colors as he spoke. "Today we honor an organization that has fundamentally changed our galaxy. Waystation 7 and the network of human repair stations have done more than fix broken ships. They have created spaces where enemies become friends, where desperation finds hope, and where excellence is defined not by profit but by service." He gestured to a holographic display showing statistics. "In the past 10 years, human repair stations have serviced over 50,000 vessels from 37 species. They have prevented 23 potential wars by maintaining neutral ground where hostile parties could meet safely. They have saved 14 colony worlds by keeping critical supply lines operational. They have trained over 5,000 young engineers from various species in the philosophy of creative problem-solving and universal service." The display shifted to show images. Ships being repaired, engineers from different species working together, colony worlds flourishing because their infrastructure remained operational. The Galactic Council has decided to award Waystation 7 and its crew the Star of Excellence, the highest civilian honor we can bestow. This award has been given only 12 times in the 2,000-year history of the Council. Never before has it been awarded to an entire organization. The audience erupted in applause. Species that rarely agreed on anything were united in this recognition. Jake walked to the stage, feeling every pair of eyes watching him. He accepted the award, a crystal star that seemed to contain entire galaxies within its structure. "I accept this on behalf of every person who has worked at this station," Jake said, his voice steady despite his nervousness. "But I also accept it for what it represents. This award says that helping others matters. That excellence is measured not in profits but in problems solved. That the best way to change the galaxy is one repair at a time, one person at a time." The Council speaker continued. "The Council has also approved the Human Repair Initiative. We will establish human-style repair stations at every major trade hub in the galaxy. We will fund training programs to teach the human philosophy of service and improvisation. We will ensure that no one in our galaxy is ever turned away when they need help." This announcement caused even more excitement. Species that had been skeptical of human methods now wanted to learn them. Governments that had protected their manufacturing monopolies now saw the value of repair over replacement. Bobby Chen was invited to speak as the eldest member of the station crew. He walked slowly to the stage, his aged body moving carefully but his mind still sharp. The audience fell silent, respectful of his years and experience. "I am going to tell you why we do this work," Bobby began, his voice stronger than his body suggested. "It is not complicated. It is not mysterious. We fix things not because it is profitable, but because broken things need fixing. We help not because someone can pay, but because someone needs help." He paused, looking out at the assembled dignitaries. 50 years ago, when humans first joined the galactic community, we were poor. We had old ships, outdated technology, and limited resources. Many species looked down on us. But we had something valuable. We had the memory of struggle. We remembered what it was like to have something break and not be able to afford to replace it. We remembered what it was like to be turned away when we needed help. The hall was completely silent now. Bobby's words carried weight earned through decades of service. So when we started fixing ships for others, we fixed them the way we wished someone had fixed ours. We charged prices we wished we had been charged. We treated customers the way we wished we had been treated. That is not excellence. That is just being human. But maybe being human is excellent. Maybe remembering your struggles and using them to help others. Maybe that is the best thing any species can do. The applause was thunderous. Bobby returned to his seat and Lisa hugged him tightly. Kate was crying, moved by the recognition of everything they had worked for. The ceremony continued with speeches from various species representatives. A Vorthan minister spoke about the plague ship rescue. A Kulthan colony administrator talked about how human stations had kept his world alive during a supply crisis. A Zirath military commander described how neutral repair stations had prevented a war. But the most moving testimony came from an unexpected source. A young Vexari engineer named Pelthon stood to speak. He had trained at Waystation 7 for 2 years, learning human repair methods. Before I came here, I believed that rules must always be followed, Pelthon said, his crystalline body showing colors of deep emotion. I believed that if the manual said something could not be fixed, then it could not be fixed. The humans taught me to question that. They taught me to see possibilities instead of limitations. They taught me that the purpose of knowledge is not to follow rules but to solve problems. He gestured to a group of young engineers from various species sitting together. We are the first generation trained in human methods. We do not see ourselves as Vexari engineers or Zirath engineers or Kulthon engineers. We see ourselves as problem solvers who happen to come from different species. That is the gift the humans gave us. They showed us that working together, thinking creatively, and refusing to accept failure can unite us across all our differences. After the formal ceremony ended, there was a reception in the station's dining hall. Dignitaries mixed with mechanics, diplomats talked with apprentices, and species that normally avoided each other shared meals and conversation. Kate found herself talking to a group of young alien engineers who wanted to learn about human training methods. She explained the philosophy that Danny had taught her. The first thing you learn is that the manual is a guide, not a law, Kate said. The manual tells you how the original designer intended things to work. But reality is more complicated than any manual. Ships get damaged in unexpected ways. Parts wear out differently than predicted. You need to understand the principles behind the manual so you can adapt when the manual does not have answers. A young Zirath engineer asked, "But how do you know when it is safe to break the rules?" "You never break safety rules," Kate said firmly. "But most rules are not about safety. They are about convenience or profit or simplicity. You break those rules when breaking them serves the customer better. You break them when following them would mean giving up on someone who needs help." Across the room, Jake found himself surrounded by government officials who wanted to discuss opening new human-style repair stations in their territories. He listened patiently to their proposals, but he had conditions. "We will help you establish new stations," Jake said, "but they must follow our principles. Fair prices for everyone. No one refuse service based on politics or wealth. Mechanics trained in improvisation and creative problem-solving, not just following manuals. And the stations must be truly neutral ground where all species are welcome." Most officials agreed immediately. A few hesitated, worried about giving up political control. Jake was firm with them. "If you want a station that serves your political interests, hire someone else," Jake said. "Human repair stations serve everyone equally or they serve no one. That is not negotiable." Danny stood in the observation deck with Lisa and Bobby, watching the stars and the diplomatic ships docked at the station. They had come a long way from the small repair bay where they had started. "Do you think we really changed anything?" Danny asked. "Or will things go back to normal once the excitement fades?" "We changed something important," Lisa said. "We showed that another way is possible, that you can build a successful operation based on service instead of profit, that treating people fairly can be more valuable than treating them as customers." "That will not fade," Bobby smiled. "You know what makes me most proud? It is not this award or this ceremony. It is what I saw yesterday. A young Zirath and a young Vexari working together on a repair, arguing about the best solution,